Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be delving into some training sessions and some ideas that maybe you can use yourself to extend the amount of time you can spend riding as close as possible to your FTP. Now I know FTP gets a bit of a bad rep and some would call it a flex threshold power. But there is still some use for it, or at least certainly when it comes to holding steady state power for quite a long period of time. At the end of the day, it's just a number that you can base things off of. So I do still tend to use it from time to time. If you've ever done any sort of training sessions, or if you've ever done a time trial where you've tried to settle into close to your FTP and just hold it for as long as you possibly can, you may be surprised to find that maybe you can only hold it for 32 minutes or 41 minutes. But for the majority of us, starting from scratch, we tend to have quite a low tolerance, generally, to holding this high sustained power output. Now, over the last couple of weeks, I've been doing some sessions that will hopefully help me this weekend of the British Time Trial Championships to hold my highest possible average power for just over an hour. Now, we talk about FTP like it is a holy number, or maybe not so much anymore, but the real flex threshold power is to be able to hold that number for as long as humanly possible. Now, if you start out on a training block and you test yourself by trying to hold your current FTP for as long as you possibly can, you might be surprised to only get to somewhere between 20 and 35 minutes. However, by building in some training sessions over the next couple of weeks, you can do what I've done and slowly stretch out that time to exhaustion. Now, that term is used now a fair bit, and I first heard it from quite a renowned coach in America named Colin Moore. Now, the actual fundamentals of it are somewhat straightforward. I mean, you can work above FTP, you can work below FTP, and you can mix in certain sessions to really drag or stretch out the power output. Essentially, starting out by doing a session like a 3x12 minute at 90 to 100% of FTP would be a good starting point for most people. You kind of want to be getting to maybe the end of that second interval, maybe halfway through the third interval, where you start to bargain with yourself. That's when you know that you're at the roundabout the right intensity, especially if at the minute you can only hold your FTP for about 30 minutes. So, as you can probably tell, the idea is to work slightly below your FTP, but just for slightly longer when you start to accumulate the time. So a 3x12 would give you 36 minutes of total work. So that would be roughly 6 minutes more than what you could do if you were just holding it steady state. Now, when it comes to recovery periods, this is where things can get really tasty. You can start to manipulate it in a way that you could really get very short recoveries in. I like to do just 2.5 minutes of recovery sometimes, because then I feel like not only am I recovering pretty quickly, but it's almost as if I'm doing a full straight 36-minute block, but those 2.5 minutes of recoveries are more just mental breaks than anything else. Truth be told, if you were doing these intervals out on the open road, you might have a descent or some traffic that for 60 seconds you might have to ease up for. That doesn't necessarily completely ruin your interval. I've learned enough over the last 15 years to certainly take that with a pinch of salt, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to completely redo the interval. Now, with something at that 90% of FTP intensity, you could certainly build that out to something like 3x30 minutes. Now, that sounds like a heck of a lot, I know, but eventually, you will get there. And I've certainly done 50-mile time trials, which have taken around 2 hours, maybe slightly less, where I've ridden at around 90% of FTP. A really good session, and a big favorite of a lot of people on this channel, is over and under intervals. perfect lactate shuttling intervals, whereby you go slightly above FTP for a certain amount of time and then you come back down slightly below. It's not a massive swing either way, but it's enough that you don't really have to do super long blocks to start to feel like you're accumulating quite a bit of fatigue. So one of my personal favorites, which I'll throw up on the screen, is actually a 2x20 minute workout, which has a relatively hard start and then almost steps down as you go through it before finally taking one step back up and then stepping back down to just below FTP. It's one of those sessions where if you complete it, you certainly feel like you're on to something. I'll leave a breakdown of that session for you down below so you can steal it and try it if you wish. So with a training block like this, I would really recommend trying to be quite specific with it. Spending a minimum of 4 weeks or maybe a 3-week block out of a 4-week month, really focusing on 2 to 3 sessions a week possibly of doing this kind of aerobic building, because you can make yourself really strong just by doing this kind of work. So by doing these sessions and by gradually building them out and adding another block or reducing recovery time, you will start to get an idea in your head and start to feel, but you'll certainly start to visualize through seeing the data in front of you, that you are able to actually hold a much larger amount of power now for a much longer period of time. You know, if you start out just by doing 3x12, for example, and you finish by being able to do a 3x30 after 6 weeks, you've certainly become more resilient and durable, riding quite close to this lactate threshold. Now, in my own personal experience and also my own personal preference, I quite like to include one session maybe once every 2 weeks, where I know I'm doing almost one continuous block. So rather than doing 3x20s or, 5x10s or anything like that, I'll actually go out and I'll do a straight run through of 45 minutes at 95% of FTP, or try and get close to 100% of FTP for that period of time. That just gives me a little bit of feedback, but a bit of confidence as well that I'm there or thereabouts and things are working. Now, that is certainly a training session in itself, and also quite a tough one. So in summary then, you have a starting point, and it's like playing a game, like snakes and ladders. You got to make sure you find your way to the end by using the ladders and avoiding the snakes. Strange analogy, I know, but we are trying to keep momentum moving forward. We find certain sessions that work, we stick to them, we modify them, and we gradually stretch out that time that we can spend at that intensity. It's quite magical in a way that when you get to the end of your training block and you look back at what you've done and you can see that there's actual progress there. To be honest, it's one of my favorite training blocks to go through, because it's just feels like good honest work, and also just feels like producing a good couple of hundreds of watts for a long period of time really makes you feel like you're actually getting somewhere. It's not like doing VO2 max or anaerobic capacity intervals where you're just smashing it for a couple of minutes and that's it. To me, these sessions, I just absolutely love them. So this weekend at the British Time Trial Championships, I'm going to be hopefully aiming for around about what my FTP is currently at 360 watts. But I'm going to be fairly confident I can hold 340, 350 watts for that hour, based on a lot of the training sessions that I've done over the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to leave you there with that one. I hope you enjoyed this video and got something out of it. Let me know your favorite training session down below. If it is similar to any of these that I mentioned, I'd love to hear from you. So until next time, I'll see you then.